Hey there, and welcome to Crazy Pepper, the channel where drama sizzles and revenge burns hotter than ever. If you love jaw dropping twists, bold characters, and stories that keep you guessing till the end, you're in the right place. Subscribe and dive into gripping tales of betrayal, karma, and ultimate payback. Get ready for unforgettable moments and satisfying endings, only on Crazy Pepper. Hit that bell and let the drama begin. The living room looked like a Norman Rockwell painting designed by someone with a sixth sense of humor. Matching Christmas sweaters, twinkling lights, and the kind of artificial warmth that money can buy but never quite pulls off. I stood in the doorway of my parents' mansion, watching my brother Derek sit next to my fiancée Lauren on the good couch, the one Mom usually reserved for visiting dignitaries and people she actually gave a damn about. They weren't just sitting together. They were together. Derek's arm draped casually across the back of the sofa, his fingers playing with Lauren's hair like he owned it, like he owned her. Maybe he did now. "Marcus!" Mom's voice cut through the Christmas jazz playing softly in the background. "There you are. We weren't sure you'd make it." I had been invited to this Christmas gathering exactly the same way I'd been invited to every family event for the past 38 years, reluctantly, out of obligation, and with the unspoken hope that I might decline. The golden boy Derek never had to worry about his invitation status. Hell, they probably sent his in calligraphy. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, stepping into the room. The lie tasted like eggnog, sweet on the surface, nauseating underneath. Dad looked up from his leather armchair, the one positioned to survey his kingdom like some suburban throne. He was still wearing his work clothes, expensive suit, power tie, the armor of a man who'd built an empire one contract at a time. His eyes swept over me with the same expression he might use to evaluate a disappointing quarterly report. "Derek was just telling us about the promotion," Dad said, raising his scotch and a mock toast. "Regional manager, youngest in company history." Of course he was. Derek had always been the achiever, the golden child, the son who made sense. At 34, he had Dad's jaw, Mom's charm, and absolutely none of my inconvenient tendency to ask uncomfortable questions. He was everything our parents had wanted in an heir: handsome, ambitious, and just ruthless enough to carry on the family tradition of putting profit over principles. "Congratulations," I said, meaning it about as much as a cancer diagnosis. "Thanks, bro." Derek's grin was the same one he'd worn when he'd borrowed my girlfriend in high school, when he'd gotten into Harvard while I'd settled for state school, when he'd landed a job at Dad's company straight out of college while I'd been told to find my own way. It was a grin that said I win in a language only brothers understand. Lauren shifted beside him, and I noticed she was wearing the necklace I'd given her for her birthday last month. The irony wasn't lost on me. My jewelry, his girl, their future. She caught me looking and had the decency to glance away, but not before I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance that I was still standing there, disrupting their perfect little tableau. Mom moved through the room like a hostess from hell, all smiles and passive aggression wrapped in a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than most people's rent. She handed Lauren a glass of wine, the good wine, the stuff she usually kept locked away for special occasions. Then she handed Derek a scotch, neat, just like Dad's. When she got to me, she paused. "There's beer in the kitchen," she'd said. "Help yourself." Beer in the kitchen, while the happy couple got the premium liquor service in the living room. The message was clear enough to read from space. "You don't belong here." "Actually," I said, "I'm good. Thanks, though. Suit yourself." Mom settled into her chair, the one that gave her the perfect angle to watch Derek and Lauren like she was observing some fascinating social experiment. Lauren was just telling us about her new position at Morrison & Associates. Senior consultant. Very impressive for someone so young. Lauren flushed prettily. She'd always been good at that, the modest blush that made her look innocent, even when she was anything but. "It's a great opportunity," she said. "The salary alone is—" She trailed off, glancing at me. "Well, it's substantial." Substantial, right. Because that's what mattered in our family. The bottom line, the profit margin, the quarterly projections. Love was a luxury item, and apparently I'd been priced out of the market. "She deserves it," Derek said, his hand finding hers. "Lauren's brilliant. Dad's been saying the company could use someone with her skills." Dad nodded approvingly. Smart woman. Knows how to pick her battles. How to pick her partnerships. The word hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Partnerships, not relationships, not love, not even basic human affection. Partnerships, business arrangements, mergers and acquisitions of the heart. Speaking of partnerships, Mom said, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she was about to deliver a killing blow, we should talk about the engagement. My engagement to Lauren. The engagement that was apparently being discussed in past tense while the bride-to-be sat cuddled up with my brother like some kind of twisted Christmas miracle. There's no need to make this awkward, Lauren said, finally finding her voice. Marcus and I, we've grown apart. These things happen. These things happen. Like catching the flu, like missing a train, like accidentally falling onto my brother's pecker sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas morning. Don't be petty, Mom said, her eyes fixed on me with laser precision. There's no love lost here. You two weren't right for each other anyway. Anyone could see that. Anyone could see that. Translation. Everyone had been talking about this behind my back, analyzing my relationship like it was some kind of failed business venture, reaching the consensus that I was the weak link in the chain. Derek leaned forward, his expression almost sympathetic. Almost. She chose the better man, Marcus. No hard feelings, right? We're family. Family, right. The kind of family that stabs you in the back and then asks you to pull out the knife yourself. Dad set down his scotch with the kind of deliberate precision that meant he was about to deliver a verdict. In the courtroom of our living room, he was judge, jury, and executioner, and I was pretty sure I knew which way this trial was going. Stop acting like a sufferer, he said, his voice carrying the weight of 38 years of disappointment. You were never good enough for anyone, Marcus. Lauren's smart enough to recognize that. Derek's man enough to step up. Maybe it's time you grew up and accepted reality. Never good enough for anyone. The words hit like a physical blow, but I'd been taking hits from this family for so long that I'd developed something like immunity. Or maybe it was just scar tissue. Either way, I felt something inside me click into place, like a lock engaging or a safety being released. I looked around the room, at Mom with her satisfied smirk, at Dad with his casual cruelty, at Derek with his victorious grin, at Lauren with her guilty relief. They were all waiting for me to break down, to beg, to make a scene that would justify their narrative about my inadequacy. Instead, I smiled. You know what? I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You're absolutely right. You'll show me exactly who you are. Thanks for making it so easy. The smile seemed to unsettle them more than tears would have. Mom's smirk faltered. Dad frowned. Derek's grin became uncertain around the edges. What's that supposed to mean? Lauren asked. Nothing, I said, still smiling. Just thank you for the clarity, for being so honest about what you really think of me. It's refreshing. I turned to go, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and Derek, congratulations on the promotion. I'm sure you've earned it. I left before dessert. Nobody followed. As I walked to my car, I could hear the murmur of conversation resuming inside, probably analyzing my reaction, dismissing my parting words as the desperate attempt of a broken man to save face. They had no idea that they'd just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Because they were right about one thing. I'd been holding back, playing the role of the family disappointment, the acceptable loss, the collateral damage in their pursuit of success. But that Marcus was done. The new Marcus, the one walking away from that house with a smile on his face and homicide in his heart, was going to be a very different story. They wanted to see exactly who I was. Perfect. I was about to give them a masterclass. My apartment looked like what it was, the home of a man who'd been living in other people's shadows for so long he'd forgotten what sunlight felt like. Bare walls, minimal furniture, the kind of sterile efficiency that screamed temporary, even after 3 years of occupancy. I'd never bothered making it a home, because I'd always assumed I'd be moving into something better, something shared, something that mattered. Funny how quickly assumptions can crumble. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff, not the swill I usually drank, and settled into my desk chair. The computer hummed to life with the soft efficiency of expensive hardware, multiple monitors flickering on to reveal a digital landscape that would have made most people's eyes glaze over. Numbers, databases, encrypted files, The electronic breadcrumbs that people left behind when they thought nobody was watching. My phone buzzed. Eli. Saw the news about your brother's promotion. His voice carried that particular mix of sympathy and curiosity that old friends deploy when they smell drama. Figured you might need to talk. Eli Ramirez had been my partner back when I was still pretending to be a normal person with normal problems. 20 years of friendship, built on shared cynicism and a mutual understanding that the world was generally screwed and most people were making it worse. He was the only person who knew what I really did for a living. And more importantly, he was the only person who understood why I kept it a secret from my family. Actually, I said, I'm doing better than I have in months. That's either very good news or very bad news. Given your family's talent for psychological warfare, I'm guessing bad. Depends on your perspective. I could hear him shifting in his chair, the creak of leather that meant he was settling in for a long conversation. Eli had been a detective for 15 years before a bullet in the leg convinced him to try private security. He had the kind of instincts that made him dangerous to be around when you were trying to keep secrets, and invaluable when you needed someone to help you uncover them. Want to tell me what happened, or should I start guessing? Lauren screwing Derek. Silence, then, Jesus, Marcus, I'm sorry. Don't be. They did me a favor. How do you figure? I pulled up a file on my computer, one I'd been building for the past 2 years, without really understanding why. Call it professional paranoia. Call it family dysfunction. Call it the natural instinct of a man whose job it was to uncover other people's secrets. The file was labeled Family Business, and it contained enough evidence to destroy 3 generations of careful reputation building. You know what's funny, Eli? They think I'm a failure. Mom introduces me as her other son, the one who never quite found his way. Dad tells people I'm an accountant who couldn't make it in the real world. Derek thinks I'm jealous of his success. You are an accountant. No, I said, opening another file. I'm a forensic auditor for the Department of Justice. I've exposed 3 Fortune 500 frauds in the past 5 years. I've put CEOs in federal prison. I've recovered over $200 million in stolen assets. But my family never bothered to ask what I actually do for a living. They just assumed failure and moved on. The silence stretched longer this time. Eli was processing, connecting dots, probably starting to understand why I sounded so calm about my fiancé cheating with my brother. Marcus, he said finally, what exactly are you telling me? I clicked through another series of files, each one a small piece of a much larger puzzle. Bank records, email intercepts, construction permits, EPA filings, payroll documents that didn't quite add up. 2 years of careful documentation assembled with the kind of methodical precision that had made me very good at my job and very dangerous to people who thought they were smarter than the system. I'm telling you that my father's construction empire is built on fraud. Environmental violations, wage theft, bribery, tax evasion, the full criminal enterprise package. I'm telling you that my brother Derek isn't just complicit. He's been actively participating in payroll fraud for 3 years. And I'm telling you that my ex-fiancée Lauren has been feeding confidential information to Morrison and Associates, Dad's biggest competitor, in what amounts to industrial espionage. Holy crap. It gets better. The promotion Derek just got, it was part of the deal. Dad promised Lauren a CFO position if she could deliver inside information about Morrison's bidding strategies. She's been playing both sides, feeding information back and forth, positioning herself to come out on top, regardless of which company wins the contract wars. I pulled up the email chain that had taken me 3 months to decrypt. Lauren's correspondence with Morrison's senior partners, detailing everything from Dad's cost overruns to Derek's skimming operation to the systematic bribery of city inspectors that had allowed Hartwell Construction to win contracts they had no business getting. She didn't choose Derek because he was the better man, I continued. She chose him because he was the easier mark. Derek's stupid enough to think with his pecker and arrogant enough to believe he deserves everything he gets. Lauren's been manipulating him from day one, just like she was manipulating me. So what are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What does a man do when he discovers that his entire family is not just morally bankrupt, but literally criminal? What does a forensic auditor do when he's been sitting on enough evidence to destroy the people who've spent decades treating him like a disappointment? I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, I said. Marcus, don't worry, nothing illegal. Nothing that can't be traced back to their own choices, their own crimes, their own spectacular stupidity. I'm just going to stop protecting them. The truth was, I'd been protecting them for 2 years. Every time I'd uncovered another piece of evidence, another smoking gun, another nail in the coffin of Hartwell Construction's legitimacy, I'd buried it. Family loyalty, misplaced as it was. The naive hope that maybe they'd change. Maybe they'd include me. Maybe they'd realize that I was worth something after all, but they'd made their position clear tonight. I was never good enough for anyone. I was the family disappointment, the acceptable loss, the collateral damage in their pursuit of success and status. Fine. If that's how they wanted to play it, I'd show them exactly what a disappointment could accomplish when he stopped trying to earn their approval and started leveraging their crimes. "When do you start?" Eli asked. I looked at the calendar on my computer screen. December 26th, the day after Christmas, when everyone would be nursing hangovers and counting their gifts and basking in the warm glow of family togetherness. The perfect time for a reckoning. "New Year's Day," I said. "Fresh start, clean slate, new beginning. Seemed appropriate." "You need help?" "Actually, yes, I need surveillance on Lauren. Professional grade, admissible in court. She's meeting with Morrison's people regularly, and I need documentation of the handoffs." "Consider it done." I hung up and stared at the files spread across my monitors. 2 years of evidence, meticulously gathered, carefully preserved, waiting for the right moment to see daylight. My family thought they knew who I was, the failure, the disappointment, the man who was never good enough for anyone. They were about to learn the difference between being underestimated and being invisible, and in about 6 days, they were going to discover that the family disappointment had been paying very close attention to their criminal enterprise. The bourbon tasted better than it had in years. New Year's Day arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made everything seem possible. While most of the city was nursing hangovers and making resolutions they'd abandoned by February, I was sitting in my home office surrounded by carefully organized evidence and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The DOJ submission portal glowed on my primary monitor, waiting for the files that would transform my family's criminal enterprise from a private shame into a federal case. I'd spent the past week triple-checking everything, verifying sources, ensuring that every piece of evidence would hold up under the kind of scrutiny that federal prosecutors brought to cases like this. 27 separate violations. That's what 2 years of careful documentation had yielded. Environmental crimes, labor violations, tax evasion, bribery, fraud, a criminal buffet that would keep federal prosecutors busy for months. I started with the EPA violations. Dad's company had been dumping construction waste in protected wetlands for over 5 years, saving hundreds of thousands in disposal costs while poisoning groundwater that supplied 3 suburban communities. The photographic evidence was damning. The chemical analysis was conclusive, and the cover-up involved forged environmental impact statements that constituted federal fraud. Upload complete. Next came the labor violation. Undocumented workers paid in cash at below minimum wage. Safety violations that had resulted in 3 hospitalizations that were never reported to OSHA. Systematic wage theft that affected over 200 employees across 5 years. Derek's payroll records were a masterclass in criminal stupidity. He documented everything, probably thinking his computer password was adequate security against investigation. Upload complete. The tax evasion was almost artistic in its complexity. Shell companies, offshore accounts, phantom employees, inflated expenses, and a web of financial fraud that had allowed Hartwell Construction to avoid paying federal taxes for 3 of the past 5 years. The IRS would have a field day with this one. Upload complete. But the crown jewel was the bribery network. City inspectors, zoning officials, permit administrators. Dad had been systematically corrupting municipal employees for over a decade, ensuring that Hartwell Construction won contracts regardless of whether they were the best bid or even minimally qualified. The paper trail was extensive, the recorded conversations were clear, and the bank records showed a pattern of payments that could only be interpreted one way. Upload complete. I sat back and looked at the confirmation screen. Case number assigned. Investigation priority high. Estimated response time 72 hours. Happy New Year, Dad. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. Package delivered. You need to see this. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Eli's car outside a downtown coffee shop, watching Lauren through telephoto lenses as she handed a manila envelope to a man I recognized from Morrison & Associates' website. Tom Brewster, senior partner, the kind of corporate shark who wore expensive suits and cheaper morals. Third meeting this week, Eli said, adjusting the camera angle. Same routine every time. She brings documents, he brings cash. Old school espionage, no electronic trail. I watched Lauren laugh at something Brewster said, her hand lingering on his arm in a gesture that was definitely not professional. She's screwing him too. That's what I figured. Your ex-fiancé's got quite the operation going, playing 3 men at once, positioning herself to come out ahead regardless of how the corporate warfare shakes out. The camera captured Brewster sliding an envelope across the table, Lauren checking the contents, the satisfied smile that crossed her face as she tucked it into her purse. Industrial espionage in broad daylight, documented in high definition, admissible in court. How much do you think she's making? I asked. Based on the envelope size and her reaction, 5 figures per meeting minimum. She's not just selling information, she's selling comprehensive intelligence. Your father's bidding strategies, cost breakdowns, client lists, employee records, everything Morrison needs to outmaneuver Hartwell Construction in the marketplace. I thought about Derek probably at home nursing his hangover and basking in the glow of his promotion, completely unaware that his new girlfriend was systematically destroying the company he thought he was going to inherit. The irony was beautiful in its completeness. Get me audio, I said. Eli adjusted the equipment, and Lauren's voice came through the speakers with crystal clarity. Derek's completely clueless. He thinks he's running payroll, but I've been copying everything for months. Employee records, subcontractor lists, union negotiations, everything you need to poach their best people. Brewster's laugh was ugly. And your future brother-in-law? Marcus? He's harmless. Some kind of failed accountant who never amounted to anything. The family treats him like a joke, and honestly, I can see why. No ambition, no connections, no future. Derek's everything Marcus isn't. Successful, confident, going places. Failed accountant, no ambition, harmless. I felt something cold settle in my chest, a kind of crystalline fury that was far more dangerous than hot anger. They didn't just think I was worthless. They dismissed me so completely that they were conducting their criminal conspiracy in plain sight, confident that I was too stupid and too irrelevant to pose any threat. There's more, Eli said. Listen to this. Lauren's voice continued. The best part is that Marcus actually helped me understand the business. He'd ask these detailed questions about construction processes, regulatory requirements, cost structures. I thought he was just trying to be supportive, but he was basically giving me a masterclass in everything Morrison needed to know about Hartwell's operations. I had been trying to be supportive. Every conversation about her work, every question about the industry, every attempt to understand her professional challenges. I'd been unknowingly providing the intelligence that she was selling to my father's competitors. Stupid fool probably still thinks I loved him, Lauren continued. Like I'd waste my time on a loser when I could have Derek. At least Derek's going somewhere in life. Brewster's voice was amused. And after the merger? After Morrison absorbs Hartwell's contracts and Derek's out of a job? I'll be CFO of the combined operation and Derek will be a pleasant memory. The Hartwell family will be finished and I'll be exactly where I planned to be from the beginning. The merger. Of course, Lauren wasn't just selling information, she was orchestrating a complete corporate takeover, positioning herself to survive the destruction of my family's business while eliminating everyone who might threaten her future position. Got enough? Eli asked. More than enough. I spent the rest of the afternoon making copies, encrypting files, preparing evidence packages for multiple recipients. The DOJ submission was just the beginning. By evening, I'd sent comprehensive dossiers to Morrison & Associates Board of Directors, their primary competitors, the local business journal, and 3 different law enforcement agencies. If Lauren wanted to play corporate warfare, she was about to learn what happened when you brought a knife to a nuclear fight. By tomorrow morning, everyone who mattered in the construction industry would know exactly what kind of operation Morrison was running and exactly what kind of person Lauren really was. But that was just the appetizer. The main course would come when the federal agents arrived at Hartwell Construction, armed with enough evidence to turn my family's empire into a criminal case study. I poured myself a drink and watched the sun set over the city, thinking about Derek's promotion, Lauren's betrayal, and my parents' casual cruelty. They'd spent decades treating me like I was invisible, like I didn't matter, like I was too insignificant to be worth their attention. Tomorrow, they were going to discover that being invisible had given me the perfect vantage point to watch them destroy themselves. And being insignificant had made it remarkably easy to document their crimes without anyone noticing. The bourbon tasted like victory. The federal agents arrived at Hartwell Construction at exactly 9:47 a.m. on January 3rd, armed with search warrants, seizure orders, and the kind of bureaucratic efficiency that turns corporate empires into criminal evidence in a matter of hours. I watched from across the street, sipping coffee and enjoying the show as 20 years of my father's careful reputation building crumbled in real time. The news vans showed up within an hour, drawn by the irresistible spectacle of another corporate fraud investigation. Local reporters jockeyed for position as federal agents carried boxes of documents out of the building, each cardboard container representing years of criminal activity that my family had thought was safely buried in corporate paperwork. My phone rang. Dad. Marcus, what the hell is happening? The FBI is at my office. They're seizing everything. They're treating me like a common criminal. Are you a common criminal? I asked. Silence, then. Don't be smart with me. I need you to call your lawyer friends, see if anyone knows what this is about. The agents won't tell me anything except that they're investigating financial irregularities and environmental violations. This has to be some kind of mistake. Financial irregularities, environmental violations. The federal government's polite way of saying, we know you're a crook and we can prove it. I don't have lawyer friends, Dad, remember? I'm the family disappointment, the one who never amounted to anything. This isn't the time for... He stopped mid-sentence, and I could hear voices in the background, official voices, using the kind of tone that meant someone was about to be arrested. Oh, God, they're reading Derek his rights. Derek. My golden boy brother, the regional manager, the heir apparent, the man who'd stolen my fiancé and my parents' approval. I wondered if he was thinking about Lauren right now, if he was worried about how this would affect their relationship, if he had any idea that his new girlfriend was the reason federal agents knew exactly where to look for evidence of his crimes. Marcus, I need you to... The line went dead. Either Dad had hung up, or more likely someone had confiscated his phone as evidence. I imagined him standing in his corner office, watching federal agents photograph his awards and accolades, finally understanding that all his careful image management was worthless when confronted with actual evidence of actual crimes. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. Target on the move. Lauren's running. I found Eli's car 3 blocks from Lauren's apartment building, engine running, eyes fixed on the parking garage exit. She came tearing out of there 10 minutes ago, he said. Suitcase in the back seat, scared look on her face. Someone tipped her off. Probably Brewster. Morrison's board got my evidence package yesterday. They'd want to distance themselves from the espionage operation before it becomes a federal case. Lauren's BMW emerged from the garage, moving fast but not fast enough to attract police attention. Professional panic, the kind that comes from careful planning rather than pure terror. She'd probably been preparing for this possibility since the day she'd started selling information to Morrison. Follow her, I said. We tracked Lauren through downtown traffic, watching her make the kind of evasive turns that suggested she was either very paranoid or very well trained in counter-surveillance. She ended up at a high-rise apartment complex in the financial district, the kind of place where corporate executives kept discreet second homes for discreet activities. Brewster's place, I said, recognizing the address from the background check Eli had run. She's probably hoping Morrison will protect her. Think they will? Not a chance. Corporate sharks don't protect assets that have become liabilities. She's about to learn the difference between being valuable and being disposable. We watched Lauren park and hurry into the building, her usual confidence replaced by something that looked like genuine fear. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt something approaching sympathy for her. Not much, but enough to recognize that she was about to discover what it felt like to be abandoned by people who'd claimed to care about her. 20 minutes later, she came back out, alone. No suitcase, no confident stride, no satisfied smile. Just a woman who'd finally run out of angles to play and people to manipulate. She stood by her car for a moment, probably trying to decide where to go next, what move to make, which bridge to burn, in her desperate attempt to avoid the consequences of her choices. Then she saw me. I'd gotten out of Eli's car and was leaning against a lamppost, making no attempt to hide or avoid recognition. Lauren's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, anger, and finally something that might have been relief. She walked over slowly, like someone approaching a dangerous animal. Marcus, Lauren, I suppose you think this is funny. Actually, I think it's educational. You spent months telling people I was harmless, too stupid to be a threat, too irrelevant to matter. Turns out that was a strategic miscalculation. Her laugh was bitter. You did this? Somehow, you're behind all of this. I didn't make your father-in-law commit environmental fraud. I didn't make Derek steal money from his own company. I didn't make you sell corporate secrets to Morrison and Associates. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice. You fool! You've destroyed everything. No, I said, you destroyed everything. I just documented the process. Lauren's composure finally cracked. You don't understand. Brewster's cutting me loose. Morrison's claiming they never authorized the information purchases, that I was acting as a rogue agent. Your family's finished, Derek's going to prison, and I'm going to be the scapegoat for everyone's crimes. Sounds like you picked the wrong partners. Please. The word came out strangled, desperate. Help me. We were engaged. That has to mean something. I made mistakes, but I never meant for it to go this far. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to remember what I'd seen in this woman. What had made me think she was worth loving, worth building a future with? The beauty was still there, the intelligence, the charm that had initially attracted me. But underneath it all was something cold and calculating, something that had been there all along, but that I'd been too naive or too hopeful to recognize. You made your choice, I said. Derek was the better man, remember? He was going somewhere in life. I was just the harmless loser who never amounted to anything. I was wrong. No, you were right. I was harmless. Past tense. The new me is something different entirely. I walked away, leaving her standing by her car in the financial district, probably trying to figure out which federal agency would be coming for her first. Behind me, I could hear her calling my name, but the sound faded quickly, absorbed by the city noise and the satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. My phone rang again. Mom this time. Marcus, please, you have to help us. Your father's been arrested, Derek's in custody, the news is calling us a criminal enterprise, and this is destroying our family. Our family destroyed itself, I said. I just stopped covering for you. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've known about Dad's crimes for 2 years. It means I've been protecting you, keeping quiet, hoping you'd change or at least include me in your lives. But you made it clear that I was never good enough to be part of this family. So I stopped acting like family. The silence stretched long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then, you knew, and you said nothing? I said nothing because I loved you, all of you. Even when you treated me like garbage, even when you chose Derek over me, even when you made it clear that I was a disappointment and a failure. But love has limits, Mom, and you found mine. Marcus, please. Merry Christmas, I said, and hung up. The federal investigation would take months to complete, but the outcome was already determined. Dad would go to prison, Derek would follow him, and Hartwell Construction would be dissolved to pay restitution to the sufferers of their crimes. Lauren would probably cut a deal, testifying against everyone she'd conspired with in exchange for reduced charges and witness protection. And I would go back to my job, my apartment, my quiet life as a forensic auditor who specialized in exposing corporate fraud. The only difference was that now my family knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of when they pushed me too far. They'd wanted to show me exactly who they were. Mission accomplished. Now they knew exactly who I was in return. The bourbon that night tasted like justice. Lauren's call came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the federal raid had turned my family's empire into a criminal case study. Her voice was ragged, desperate, the kind of broken that comes from watching all your carefully laid plans collapse in real time. Marcus, I need to see you. Please, I have information you need to hear. Information about what? About Derek, about your father, about things that are worse than you know. I met her at an all-night diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where desperate people went to make desperate deals. Lauren looked like she'd aged 5 years and 3 weeks, hollow eyes, trembling hands, the haunted expression of someone who'd finally run out of angles to play. The federal prosecutors offered me immunity, she said without preamble. Full immunity in exchange for my cooperation in the case against your family. Congratulations. You don't understand. They want everything. Not just the Morrison deal, not just the information I sold. They want me to testify about Derek's embezzlement, your father's bribery network, the money laundering through the shell companies. They know things, Marcus. Things I never told them. I sipped my coffee and waited. Lauren had always been dramatic, but there was something different about her panic now. Something that suggested she'd discovered exactly how deep the rabbit hole went. Derek's been skimming money for 5 years, not 3. Over $200,000 hidden in accounts I helped him set up. Your father knew about it. He was using Derek's theft as leverage, making sure Derek stayed loyal by keeping evidence of his crimes. Family business, I said. No, it gets worse. The environmental violations? They're not just dumping construction waste. They've been disposing of industrial chemicals, toxic materials from other companies. Your father was running an illegal waste disposal operation, taking money to dump materials that should have gone to hazardous waste facilities. That was new information, even for me. I'd known about the wetlands contamination, but not about the broader waste disposal scheme. It explained why the EPA had moved so quickly, why the investigation had expanded beyond simple construction fraud. How much worse? Lauren pulled out a tablet, showed me financial records I'd never seen before. $12 million over 8 years, enough toxic waste to contaminate groundwater for 3 counties. And Derek knew about all of it. He wasn't just managing payroll, he was coordinating the disposal schedules, arranging payments, covering up the paper trail. I stared at the numbers, trying to process the scope of what my family had been doing. This wasn't just corporate fraud. This was environmental terrorism, the kind of systematic poisoning that affected thousands of people and lasted for generations. Why are you telling me this? Because the prosecutors think you were involved. They think there's no way you could have worked for the DOJ, lived in this city, been engaged to me, and not known about the full scope of the operation. They think you're either complicit or you're the whistleblower who's been feeding them information. Both, actually, but I wasn't about to clarify that for her. So what do you want? I want you to help me disappear. New identity, new life, somewhere the federal prosecutors can't find me. In exchange, I'll give you everything: bank records, communication logs, video evidence of meetings with your father and Derek. Everything you need to make sure they never see daylight again. Lauren had always been transactional, but this was impressive even for her. She was offering to destroy the people she'd been sleeping with in exchange for help escaping the consequences of her own crimes. You're assuming I want them to never see daylight again, don't you? Her laugh was bitter. After what they did to you? After the way they treated you? After Christmas? I thought about Christmas, about Derek's smirk and Dad's casual cruelty and Mom's dismissive sneer, about being told I was never good enough for anyone, about watching my fiancé choose my brother, about being treated like a disappointment and a failure by people who were systematically poisoning their own community for profit. What makes you think I have the resources to help you disappear? Because you're not who you pretended to be. The Failed Accountant Act was BS. I've done research, Marcus. Real research. You're not just a forensic auditor. You're a specialist in financial crimes. You've worked undercover operations. You have connections in law enforcement that go way beyond normal consulting work. She'd been busy. And she was right. My work for the DOJ had involved more than just analyzing spreadsheets. There had been undercover operations, witness protection coordination, the kind of deep investigative work that required security clearances and federal credentials. Even if I could help you, I said, why would I? You betrayed me. You're destroying my family. You've been lying to me for months. What's my incentive to help you escape justice? Lauren leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Because I can give you something better than justice. I can give you revenge. She pulled out her phone, showed me a video file. Derek and my father in Dad's office, discussing the toxic waste operation with the kind of casual cruelty that made my skin crawl. We've been recording everything for months, Lauren said. Insurance in case the operation went bad. Derek thinks he's so smart, but he's been documenting his own crimes. Your father thinks he's untouchable, but he's been confessing to felonies on camera. The video showed Derek laughing about families who'd complained about contaminated water, Dad joking about stupid environmentalists who didn't understand the economics of waste disposal. It was damning, disgusting, and exactly the kind of evidence that would ensure they spent the rest of their lives in federal prison. There's more, Lauren continued. Hours of footage, dozens of meetings, complete documentation of the entire criminal enterprise. Give me a new identity, and I'll give you everything. Your family will be finished, and you'll be the one who finished them. I stared at the tablet, at the financial records and video files and comprehensive documentation of my family's crimes. Lauren was offering me the nuclear option, the complete destruction of everyone who'd ever dismissed me or underestimated me or treated me like I didn't matter. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. I need to think about it, I said. You have 24 hours. After that, I'm cutting a deal with the prosecutors and disappearing into witness protection. This is your only chance to get everything you want. I left the diner with Lauren's offer echoing in my head and her evidence burning a hole in my conscience. She was right. I could destroy my family completely. Ensure they never recovered from the scandal. Make them pay for every slight and every dismissal and every moment of casual cruelty they'd inflicted on me over the years. But there was something else that Lauren didn't know. Something that changed the entire equation. Something I'd discovered during my own investigation that made her offer both unnecessary and irrelevant. Because I didn't need her help to destroy my family. I'd already done it. The federal investigation was just the beginning, the opening move in a much larger game that would end with the complete collapse of everything they'd built. And the best part? They were going to destroy each other with no help from me required. I went home and poured myself a drink, thinking about Lauren's desperation and Derek's arrogance, and my parents' casual assumption that I was too weak and too stupid to threaten them. Tomorrow I was going to show them exactly how wrong they'd been about everything. The bourbon tasted like anticipation. The construction site at midnight looked like something out of a noir film. Half-finished buildings reaching toward a storm-dark sky, construction equipment casting strange shadows in the security lighting, rain beginning to fall with the kind of steady persistence that suggested it was going to get much worse before it got better. I'd chosen this location carefully. Hartwell Construction's final project, the one that had been shut down by federal order when the EPA discovered toxic waste buried in the foundation. The irony was perfect. My family's criminal empire ending where it had begun. In a hole they'd dug for themselves. Derek's car pulled up at 12:15, 15 minutes late, because punctuality had never been his strong suit. He got out slowly, looking around nervously, probably wondering if this was some kind of trap, which of course it was. Marcus? His voice carried across the construction site, uncertain and slightly afraid. You said you had information about Lauren? I stepped out of the shadows near the main building frame, close enough to be seen, but far enough away to maintain tactical advantage. I do, but first, we need to talk about your situation. Derek moved closer, and I could see that federal custody hadn't been kind to him. He'd made bail, probably by mortgaging everything the family owned, but he looked hollow, desperate, like a man who'd finally realized that all his advantages had evaporated overnight. The prosecutors are offering me a deal, he said. Reduced sentence if I cooperate fully, testify against Dad, provide evidence about the waste disposal operation. They think I can help them recover the missing money. Can you? Some of it, maybe half. The rest is in accounts I don't have access to, shell companies Dad set up without telling me. But, Marcus, if I take this deal, I'll have to tell them about Lauren's involvement. Everything she did, everyone she worked with. She'll go to prison. I almost laughed. Even now, even facing federal prison himself, Derek was worried about protecting the woman who'd been systematically betraying him for months. Love really was blind, deaf, and catastrophically stupid. You still care about her? I love her. The words came out broken, desperate. I know she made mistakes. I know she was working with Morrison, but she was trying to protect herself. You can understand that, right? You loved her too. I had loved her, past tense. But that love had been based on a lie, a carefully constructed fiction designed to make me complicit in my own betrayal. The woman I'd loved had never existed. She'd been a role Lauren was playing, a mask she wore while she positioned herself to destroy everyone around her. Derek, I said, there's something you need to know about Lauren. What? I pulled out my phone, played the audio file Eli had recorded at the coffee shop. Lauren's voice filled the construction site, clear and cold and utterly without remorse. Derek's completely clueless. He thinks he's running payroll, but I've been copying everything for months. Derek's face went white. That's not... She wouldn't... I played the next segment. The best part is that Marcus actually helped me understand the business. Stupid fool probably still thinks I loved him. Like I'd waste my time on a loser when I could have Derek. Stop. But I wasn't finished. The final clip was the most damning. After Morrison absorbs Hartwell's contracts and Derek's out of a job, I'll be CFO of the combined operation, and Derek will be a pleasant memory. The Hartwell family will be finished. Derek staggered backward, like he'd been physically struck. All this time, she was playing you, playing all of us. The engagement to me was cover for her espionage operation. The relationship with you was positioning for the corporate takeover. She never loved either of us, Derek. We were just useful idiots in her plan to destroy our family. The rain was getting heavier, turning the construction site into a maze of mud and standing water. Derek stood in the middle of it, getting soaked, looking like a man who'd just watched his entire worldview collapse. But she chose me, he said weakly. She said I was the better man. She chose you because you were easier to manipulate, because you had access to more valuable information, because you were stupid enough to think with your pecker instead of your brain. Derek's face went through a series of expressions: shock, hurt, anger, and finally something that looked like murderous rage. That witch! That damn witch! I gave her everything. I risked everything for her, and she was planning to destroy me from the beginning. Welcome to the club. Where is she? I want to talk to her. I wanted to hear her explain this. She's probably in federal custody by now, or witness protection. The prosecutors offered her immunity in exchange for her testimony against you and Dad. She took the deal this morning. That was a lie, but it was a useful lie. Lauren was actually in a holding cell downtown, waiting for arraignment on espionage charges. But Derek didn't need to know that. He needed to believe that the woman he loved had betrayed him one final time, choosing self-preservation over loyalty. She testified against us? Complete cooperation. Bank records, communication logs, video evidence of meetings, everything you thought was private, everything you thought was safe. She documented it all and handed it over to the federal prosecutors. Derek's rage was building. The kind of fury that came from realizing you'd been played by someone you'd trusted completely. I'll eliminate her. I swear to God, I'll eliminate her. No, you won't. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I stepped closer, close enough to see the rain streaming down his face, the desperation in his eyes, the complete collapse of everything he'd thought he knew about his life. You're not a butcher, Derek. You're just a weak man who got outplayed by someone smarter than you. Smarter than me? She's a lying hooker who manipulated you for months, stole millions of dollars in information, positioned herself to survive the destruction of our family's business, and cut a deal with federal prosecutors that will keep her out of prison while you and Dad spend the next decade in federal custody. Yeah, I'd say she's smarter than you. Derek swung at me, a clumsy, desperate punch that I saw coming from a mile away. I stepped aside, let him stumble past me, watched him fall face first into the mud. When he struggled to his feet, he was covered in construction debris and humiliation. Feel better? I asked. F you, Marcus. This is your fault. Somehow, this is all your fault. How do you figure? You're the one who exposed us. You're the one who brought the federal agents. You destroyed our family. I documented your crimes. You destroyed our family by committing them. Derek wiped mud from his face, glaring at me with the kind of hatred that only brothers can achieve. You were always jealous. Jealous of my success, my relationship with Dad, my relationship with Lauren. You couldn't stand that I was better than you at everything. Better than me? I pulled out another phone, this one containing the comprehensive financial analysis I'd completed of Derek's success over the past 5 years. You want to know what you were better than me at? Embezzlement, fraud, environmental terrorism, systematic theft from your own employees. Congratulations, Derek. You were better than me at being a criminal. I was building something. I was carrying on Dad's legacy. Dad's legacy is poisoning groundwater and stealing from working families. If that's what you call success, then yeah, you were definitely better at it than me. The rain was coming down harder now, turning the construction site into a swamp. Derek stood in the middle of it, soaked and muddy, and finally beginning to understand the scope of what he'd lost. Not just his freedom, not just his future, but his entire identity as the golden child, the heir apparent, the son who'd made something of himself. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Nothing. This isn't about what I want from you. This is about what you're going to do next." What's that supposed to mean? It means you have a choice. You can keep lying to yourself, keep pretending you're the sufferer here, keep blaming everyone else and for the consequences of your choices. Or you can grow up, take responsibility for what you've done, and try to make some kind of amends for the damage you've caused. Amends to who? To the families whose water you poisoned, to the workers whose wages you stole, to the communities you've been systematically destroying for profit, to Mom, who's going to lose everything because of your crimes. Derek's laugh was bitter. Mom, you're worried about Mom. She knew Marcus. She knew about everything, the waste disposal, the embezzlement, the bribery. She's been helping Dad launder money through her charity organizations for years. That was new information. I'd suspected Mom was more involved than she'd admitted, but I hadn't realized the extent of her complicity. How much did she know? Everything. She's the one who suggested using the environmental cleanup charity as a front for the illegal disposal operation. She's the one who helped set up the shell companies. She's been an active participant in the criminal enterprise from the beginning. So much for family loyalty. So much for protecting the people I'd once loved. If Mom was actively involved in the environmental crimes, if she'd been helping to poison her own community for profit, then she deserved whatever consequences were coming. Then she'll go to prison too, I said. We all will. Thanks to you. Thanks to your choices. I didn't make you steal money. I didn't make you dump toxic waste. I didn't make you fall for Lauren's manipulation. You did all of that yourself. Derek stared at me through the rain, finally beginning to understand that this wasn't just about revenge or jealousy or family dysfunction. This was about justice, about consequences, about the simple principle that actions have results and crimes have punishments. You really hate us, don't you? I used to love you, all of you, even when you treated me like garbage, even when you made it clear I wasn't good enough to be part of this family. But love has limits, Derek, and you found mine. So what happens now? Now you go to prison. Dad goes to prison. Mom probably goes to prison. The company gets dissolved, the assets get seized, and the sufferers get whatever compensation the courts can extract from the wreckage of your criminal enterprise. And you? I go back to my life, my job, my quiet existence as a forensic auditor who specializes in exposing corporate fraud. The only difference is that now my family knows exactly who I am and what I'm capable of when they push me too far. Derek turned to walk away, then stopped. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about Lauren, about Christmas, about the way we treated you. You didn't deserve that. No, I said, I didn't. He walked back to his car, moving like a man carrying the weight of complete defeat. I watched him drive away, probably heading back to whatever temporary housing he could afford while waiting for his federal trial to begin. The rain continued to fall, washing the construction site clean, carrying away the mud and debris, and leaving behind something that looked almost like possibility. In a few years after the environmental cleanup was complete, after the toxic waste was properly disposed of, after the groundwater was restored, this site might become something useful, something that helped the community instead of poisoning it. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. News is reporting Lauren's arrest. Federal espionage charges, no bail. Thought you'd want to know. I typed back, thanks. Another text arrived, this one from an unknown number. This is your mother. Please call me. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. The federal trials would take months, maybe years. There would be testimony and evidence and legal maneuvering and media coverage. Derek would probably get 8 to 10 years, Dad would get longer, Mom would get whatever sentence fit her level of involvement. Lauren would testify against all of them, then disappear into witness protection with a new identity and a new life far away from the wreckage she'd helped create. And I would go back to my apartment, my job, my quiet life as the family disappointment who'd turned out to be anything but disappointing. The man who'd been underestimated by everyone who was supposed to love him, and who'd used that underestimation to bring down a criminal empire. The bourbon that night tasted like closure. 5 years later, I was sitting in my new office. Corner suite, floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of space that came with running your own forensic auditing firm. When the birthday card arrived. The return address showed a state-run assisted living facility 3 states away. The kind of place where people went when they'd lost everything and had nowhere else to turn. Mom's handwriting was shaky, uncertain, nothing like the confident script I remembered from childhood birthday cards and Christmas notes. The card itself was generic, the kind you bought in bulk from a discount store when you couldn't afford anything personal. Happy birthday, Marcus. I hope you're well. I think about you often and wonder if you can ever forgive an old woman's mistakes. Love, Mom. I read it twice, then set it aside and went back to reviewing the financial records that would probably put another CEO in federal prison. My firm specialized in corporate fraud investigation, and business was booming. Apparently, there was no shortage of executives who thought they were smarter than the system, and no shortage of clients who needed someone to prove them wrong. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built a successful business on the foundation of my family's criminal enterprise, using the skills I'd developed exposing their crimes to expose other people's crimes. The family disappointment had become the family success story, just not in any way they'd expected or wanted. My assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Hartwell, your wife is here?" Sarah entered with the kind of smile that still made my heart skip after 3 years of marriage. She was everything Lauren hadn't been: honest, genuine, supportive of my work without trying to exploit it for her own gain. We'd met at a conference on financial crimes, bonded over shared cynicism about corporate corruption, and built something real on a foundation of mutual respect and actual affection. "How was the deposition?" she asked. Productive, the CFO broke down and confessed to everything. His lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "Another one bites the dust. Another one goes to federal prison where he belongs." Sarah noticed the card on my desk. "From your mother? Birthday wishes from the state facility." She picked up the card, read it carefully. Sarah knew the whole story about Christmas 5 years ago, about the federal investigation, about the trials and convictions, and the complete collapse of the Hartwell family empire. She'd never pushed me to reconcile, never suggested that family forgiveness was more important than personal justice. "Are you going to respond?" "I don't think so. She sounds lonely. She sounds like someone who's finally experiencing consequences for her choices." Sarah set the card down, studied my face with the kind of attention that came from actually caring about someone's emotional well-being. "Do you ever regret it? What you did to them?" It was a question she'd asked before, usually around holidays or family milestones, times when normal people gathered with their relatives to celebrate shared history and mutual affection. I'd given her the same answer every time. But she kept asking because she wanted to make sure I was at peace with my choices. "I regret that it was necessary," I said. "I regret that they were criminals. I regret that they treated me like garbage for most of my life, but I don't regret stopping them. Even knowing what it cost you? What did it cost me? A family that never respected me? A fiancé who was using me? A brother who thought I was worthless? Parents who considered me a disappointment? I didn't lose anything worth keeping." Sarah smiled, the kind of expression that suggested she was proud of me for something. "You gained something worth keeping." She was right. I'd gained self-respect, professional success, a marriage based on honesty instead of manipulation, and the knowledge that I was capable of standing up for myself when people pushed me too far. The scared, desperate man who'd walked out of that Christmas gathering 5 years ago had been replaced by someone stronger, more confident, more certain of his own worth. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Federal prison. "Marcus, it's Derek." I hadn't heard my brother's voice in 5 years. He sounded older, tired, like someone who'd spent half a decade thinking about the choices that had led him to a federal penitentiary. "What do you want, Derek?" "I'm getting out next month. Early release for good behavior and cooperation with ongoing investigations. I wanted you to know. Congratulations. I also wanted to apologize for everything, for the way we treated you, for what we did to our family, for the crimes we committed. You were right to stop us." It was probably the first genuine apology I'd ever received from anyone in my family. Too little, too late, but genuine nonetheless. "What are you going to do when you get out?" "I don't know. Start over, I guess. Try to make amends somehow. Maybe work with environmental cleanup organizations, help repair some of the damage we caused." "That sounds like a good plan. Marcus, is there any chance we could talk? When I get out, I mean, not to ask for anything, just to, I don't know, try to be brothers again." I looked at Sarah, who was listening to my side of the conversation with the kind of supportive attention that reminded me why I'd married her. She nodded slightly, not telling me what to do, but letting me know she'd support whatever decision I made. Maybe, I said, after you've had some time to figure out who you want to be now. Thank you. Derek hung up and I sat back in my chair, thinking about second chances and family loyalty and the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Maybe Derek had learned something in federal prison. Maybe he was genuinely sorry for his crimes. Maybe he was capable of becoming someone worth knowing, or maybe he was just another convicted felon trying to manipulate his way back into the good graces of the family member who'd exposed his crimes. Time would tell. What do you think? Sarah asked. I think people can change, but they have to want to change, and they have to prove it with actions, not just words. And if he proves it, then maybe we can have a conversation. Maybe we can figure out if there's anything left worth salvaging from the wreckage of our family. Sarah kissed my forehead, a gesture of support and affection that still amazed me with its simplicity and sincerity. You're a good man, Marcus Hartwell. I'm a man who learned to stand up for himself. Took me 38 years, but I finally figured it out. Better late than never. I looked out the window at the city skyline, thinking about the past 5 years and the future that stretched ahead. Somewhere out there, Dad was still in federal prison, serving the remainder of his 12-year sentence for environmental terrorism and fraud. Mom was in the assisted living facility, surviving on Social Security and whatever charity she could find. Lauren had disappeared into witness protection, probably living under a new name in a new city, hopefully having learned something about the consequences of betraying everyone who trusted her. And I was here in my corner office, running a successful business, married to a woman who loved me for who I actually was, instead of who she wanted me to be. Building a life based on honesty and mutual respect, and the simple principle that everyone deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. The family that had spent decades telling me I wasn't good enough had been wrong about everything. I was enough. I'd always been enough. They just hadn't been capable of recognizing it. The bourbon that night tasted like peace,